Small, however, began to caper and prance. He swung his tail back and forth so that the bells rang out, and then he pretended to be alarmed by this. First he ran away from his tails, and then he chased his tails, and the two princesses put down their baskets half full of blackberries and spoke to him, calling him a silly puss. At first he wouldn't go near them, but slowly he pretended to be won over. He allowed himself to be petted and fed blackberries. He chased a hair ribbon, and he stretched out and let them admire the buttons up and down his belly. Princess Margaret's fingers tugged at his skin and then slid one hand between the looped catskin and the smallest boy skin. He bade her hand away with a paw, and Margaret's sister Georgia said knowingly that cats didn't like to be petted on their bellies. They were all good friends by the time Mrs. Revenge came out of the briar, standing on her hind legs and singing, "I have no children, and my children have no children, and their children have no children, and their children have no whiskers and no tails." At this sight, the Princess Margaret and Georgia began to laugh and point. They had never seen a cat sing or seen a cat walk on its hind legs. Small lashed his five tails furiously, and all the fur of the catskin stood up on his arched back. And they all laughed at that too. When they came back from the forest with their baskets piled with berries, Small was stalking close at her heels, and the witch's revenge came walking just behind. But she left the bag of gold hidden in the briar. That night, when the witch Lack came home, his hands were full of gifts for his children. One of his sons ran to meet him at the door and said, "Come and see what Margaret and Georgia brought home from the forest." "See what followed Margaret and Georgia home from the forest. Can we keep them?" The table had not been set for dinner, and the children of the witch's Lack had not sat down to do their homework. And then the witch Lack's throne room, there was a cat with 5 tails, spinning in circles while a second cat sat impudently upon his throne and sang, "Yes, your father's house is the shiniest, brownest, largest, and most expensive. The sweetest smelling house that has ever come out of anyone's ass." The witch Lack's children began to laugh at this, until they saw their father, standing there. Then they fell silent. Small stopped spinning. "You," said the witch Lack. "Me," said the witch Revenge, and sprang up from the throne. Before anyone knew what she was about, her jaws were fastened about the witch Lack's neck, and then she ripped out his throat. Lack opened his mouth to speak, and his blood fell out, making the witch Revenge fur more red than white. The witch Lack fell down dead, and the red ants came marching out of the hole in his neck and the hole in his mouth, and they held pieces of time in their jaws as tightly as the witch's Revenge had held Lack's throat in hers. But she let Lack go and left him lying in his blood on the floor, and she snatched up the ants and ate them quickly, as if she had been hungry for a very long time. While this was happening, the witch Lack's children stood and watched and did nothing. Small sat on the floor, his tails curled about his paws. Children, all of them, they did nothing. They were too surprised. The witch's Revenge, her belly full of ants and her mouth stained with blood, stood up and surveyed them. "Go and fetch my catskin bag," she said to Small. Small found that he could move. Around them, the princes and princesses stood absolutely still. Witch Revenge was holding them in her gaze. I'll need help, Small said. The bag is too heavy for me to carry. The Witch Revenge yawned. She licked a paw and began to pat her mouth. Small stood still. Very well, she said. Take those big, strong girls. The Princesses Margaret and Georgia with you. They know the way. The Princesses Margaret and Georgia, finding that they could move again, began to tremble. They gathered their courage and then went with Small, the two girls holding out each other's hands, out the throne room and not looking down at their by their father. The witch laughed and jumped back in the forest. Georgia began to weep, but the Princess Margaret said to Small, "Let us go." "Where will you go?" said Small. "The world is a dangerous place. There are people in it who mean you no good." He threw back his hood, and the Princess Margaret began to weep harder. "Let us go," said the Princess Margaret. "My parents are the king and queen of a country not 3 days' walk from here. They will be glad to see us again." Small said nothing. They came to the briar, and he sent the Princess Georgia in to hunt for the Catskin bag. She came out scratched and bleeding, the bag in her hand. It had caught on the briars and torn open. Gold coins rolled out like glossy drops of fat, falling on the ground. "Your father killed my mother," said Small. "And that cat, the mother's devil, will kill us or worse," said Princess Margaret. "Let us go." Small lifted the catskin bag. There were no coins in it now. The Princess Georgia was on her hands and knees, scooping up coins and putting them in her pockets. "Was he a good father?" Small asked. "He thought he was," Princess Margaret said. "But I'm not sorry he's dead. When I grow up, I'll be queen. I'll make a law to put all the witches in the kingdom to death, and all their cats as well." Small became afraid. He took up the catskin bag and ran back to the house of the witch Lack, leaving the two princesses in the forest. And whether they made their way home to the Princess Margaret's parents, or whether they fell into the hands of the thieves, or whether they lived in the briar, or whether the Princess Margaret grew up and kept her promise and bred her kingdom of witches and cats, Small never knew. And neither do I. And neither shall you. When he came into the witch's Lack's house, Witch Revenge saw at once what had happened. "Never mind," she said. There were no children, no princesses. The princesses in the throne room. The witch Lack's body lay on the floor still, but the Witch Revenge had skinned it like a coney and sewed up the skin into a bag. The bag wriggled and jerked, the sides heaving as if the witch Lack were still alive somewhere inside. The Witch Revenge still held the witch skin bag in one hand, and with the other she was stuffing a cat into the neck of the skin. The cat wailed as it went into the bag. The bag was full of wailing, but the discarded flesh of the witch Lack lolled slack. There was a little pile of gold crowns on the floor beside the flayed corpse, and transparent, papery things that blew about the room on a current of air. Surprised looks on the thin, shed faces. Cats were hiding in the corner of the room and under the throne. "Go catch them," said the Witch's Revenge, "but leave the 3 prettiest alone." "Where are the Witch Lack's children?" Small asked. Witch Revenge nodded around the room. "As you see," she said, "I've slipped off their skins and they were all cats underneath. They're cats now, but if we were to wait a year or two, They would shed their skins as well and become something new. Children are always growing. Small chased the cats around the room. They were fast, but he was faster. They were nimble, but he was nimbler. He had worn his catsuit longer. He drove the cats down the length of the room, and the witch's revenge caught them and dropped them into her bag. At the end, there were only 3 cats left in the throne room, and they were as pretty as the trio of cats anyone could ask for. All the other cats were inside the bag. Well done, and quickly too, said the witch revenge, and she took her needle and stitched shut the neck of the bag. The skin of the witch black smiled up at Small, and a cat put its head through its black-stained mouth, wailing. But the witch's revenge sewed Lax's mouth shut too. And the hole on the other side, on the other end, where a house had come out. She left only her ear holes and his nostrils, which were full of fur, rolled up so that the cats could breathe. Witch's revenge slung the skin full of cats over her shoulder and stood up. Where are you going? Small said. These cats have mothers and fathers, the witch's revenge says. They have mothers and fathers who must miss them very much. She gazed at Small. He decided not to ask again. So he waited in the house with the 2 princesses and the prince in his new catskin, their new cat suits, while the witch's revenge went down in the river. Or perhaps she took them to the market and sold them. Maybe she took each cat home to its own mother and father, back to the kingdom where it had been born. Maybe she wasn't so careful to make sure that each child was returned to its right mother and father. After all, she was in a hurry, and the cats looked very much alike at night. No one saw where she went, but the market is closer than the palaces of the kings and the queens whose children had been stolen by the witch Lack. And the river is closer still. When the witch's revenge came back to Lack's house, he looked around her. The house was beginning to stink very badly. Even Small could smell it now. I suppose the Princess Margaret let you screw her, said the witch's revenge, as if she had been thinking about this while she ran her errands. And that's why you let them go. I don't mind. She was a pretty puss. I might have let her go myself. She looked at Small's face and saw that he was confused. Never mind, she said. She had a length of string in her paw, and a cork which she had greased with a piece of fat she had cut from the witch Lack. She threaded the cork on the string, called it a good, quick little mouse, and greased the string as well, and she fed the wriggling cork to the tabby who had been curled up in Small's lap. And when she had the cork back again, she greased it again and fed it to the little black cat. And then she fed it to the little cat with 2 white forepaws, so that she had all 3 cats upon her string. She sewed up the rip in the catskin bag, and the Small put the golden crowns in the bag, and it was nearly as heavy as it had been before. Which revenge carried the bag, and Small took the greased string, holding it in her teeth, so that the 3 cats were forced to run along behind him as they left the house of the witch Lack. Small strikes a match, and he lights the house of the dead witch Lack on fire as they leave. But crap burns slowly, if at all, and that house might be burning still if someone hasn't gone and put it out. And maybe someday someone will go fishing near the river near the house and hooked their line on a bag full of princesses and princesses, wet and sorry and reeling in their catsuit skins. That's one way to catch a husband or wife. Small and the Witch's Revenge walked out without stopping, and 3 cats came behind them. They walked until they reached a little village very near the witch Small's mother lived. And there they settled down in a room the Witch's Revenge rented from the butcher. They cut the greased string and brought the cage and hung it from the hook in the kitchen. They kept the 3 cats in it, with small buck collars and leashes. Sometimes he put one of the cats on a leash and took it for a walk around town. Sometimes he wore his own catsuit and went out prowling, but the Witch's Revenge used to scold him if she caught him dressed like that. There are country manners and there are town manners, and Small was a boy about town now. The Witch's Revenge kept house. She cleaned and she cooked and made Small's bed in the morning. Like all the witch's cats, she was always busy. She melted down all the gold crowns in a stew pot and minted them into coins. Witch's Revenge wore a silk dress and gloves and a heavy veil, and ran her errands in a fine carriage. Small sat at her side. She opened an account in a bank, and she enrolled Small in a private academy. She bought a piece of land to build a house on, and she sent Small off to school every morning, no matter how he cried. But at night she took off her clothes and she slept on his pillow, and he combed her red and white fur. Sometimes at night, when she twitched and moaned, and she would ask her what she was dreaming, she said, "There are ants. Can't you comb them out? Be quick and catch them if you love me." But there were never any ants. One day when Small came home, the little cat with the white paws was gone. When he asked the Witch's Revenge, she had said the little cat had fallen out of the cage and through the open window and into the garden, and before the Witch's Revenge could think what to do, a crow would swoop down and carry the little cat off. They moved in the new house a few months later, and Small was always very careful when he went in and out of the doorway. Imagining a little cat down there in the dark, under the doorstep under his foot. Small got bigger. He didn't make any friends in the village or at school, but when you're big enough, you don't need friends. One day while he and the Witch's Revenge were eating their dinner, there was a knock at the door. When Small opened the door, there stood Flora and Jack. Flora wearing a thrift store coat, and Jack looked more than ever like a bundle of sticks. "Small," said Flora, "how tall you become." She burst into tears and wrung her beautiful hands. Jack said, looking at the Witch's Revenge, "And who are you?" Witch's Revenge said to Jack, "Who am I? I'm your mother's cat, and you're a handful of dry skin sticks in a suit 2 sizes too large. But I won't tell anyone if you won't tell either." Jack snorted at this, and Flora stopped crying. She began to look around the house, which was sunny and large and well appointed. "There's room enough for both of you," said the Witch's Revenge, "if Small doesn't mind." Small thought his heart would burst with happiness to have his family back again. He showed Flora to one bedroom and Jack to another, and then they went downstairs and had a second dinner. And Small and Witch's Revenge listened while Flora and Jack recounted their adventures. A pickpocket had taken Flora's purse, and they sold the witch's automobile and lost the money in a game of cards. Flora found her parents, but they were a pair of old scoundrels who had no use for her. She was too old to sell again. She would have realized what they were up to. She'd gone to work in a department store, and Jack had sold tickets in a movie theater. They quarreled and made up and then fallen in love with other people when they had disappointments. At last they had decided to go home to the Witch River house and see if it would do for a squat. Or if there was anything left to carry away and sell. But the house, of course, had burned down. As they argued about what to do next, Jack had smelled Small, his brother, down in the village. So here they were. "You'll live with us. You live here with us," Small said. Jack and Flora said they could not do that. They had ambitions, they said. They had plans. They would stay for a week or 2 weeks and then they'd be off again. The Wish for Revenge nodded and said that this was sensible. Every day Flora came home from school and went out again, with Flora on a bicycle built for two. Rory stayed home and Jack taught him how to hold a coin between two fingers and how to follow the egg as it moved from cup to cup. The Witch's Revenge taught them how to play bridge, although Flora and Jack couldn't be partners. They quarreled with each other as if they were husband and wife. "What do you want?" Small asked Flora one day. He was leaning against her, wishing he were still a cat and could sit in her lap. She smelled his secrets. "Why do you have to go away again?" Flora patted Small on the head. She said, "What do I want? That's easy enough. To never have to worry about money. I want to marry a man who knows he'll never cheat on me or leave me." She looked at Jack as she said this. Jack said, "I want a rich wife who won't talk back, who doesn't lie in bed all day, with the covers pulled up over her head, weeping and calling me a bundle of twigs." And he looked at Flora when he said this. Witch Revenge put down the sweater she was knitting for Small. She looked at Flora and she looked at Jack and she looked at Small. Small went in the kitchen and opened the door of the hanging cage. He lifted out two of the cats and brought Flora to Jack. "Here," he said, "a husband for you, Flora, and a wife for you, Jack. A prince and a princess, and both of them beautiful, and well brought up and wealthy, no doubt." And Flora picked up the little tomcat and said, "Don't tease at me, Small. Who ever heard of marrying a cat?" Witch Revenge said, "The trick is to keep their catskins in a safe hiding place, and if they sulk or treat you badly, sew them back into their catskin and put them in a bag and throw them in a river." Then she went and took her claw and slit the skin of the tabby-colored catsuit, and Flora was holding a naked man. Flora shrieked and dropped him on the ground. He was a handsome man, well-made, and he had a princely manner. He was not a man anyone could mistake for a cat. He stood up and made a bow, very elegant for all that he was naked. Flora blushed, but she looked pleased. "Go fetch some clothes for the prince and princess," Witch Revenge said to Small. When he got back, there was a naked princess hiding behind the sofa. And Jack was leering at her. A few weeks after that, there were 2 weddings, and then Flora left with a new husband, and Jack went off with his new princess. Perhaps they lived happily ever after. The Witch Revenge said to Small, "We have no wife for you." Small shrugged. "I'm still too young," he said. tries as hard as he can. Small is getting older now. The catskin barely fits across his shoulders. The buttons strain when he fastens them. His grown-up fur, his people fur, is coming in. At night he dreams. The witch, his mother's Spanish heel beats against the pane of the glass. The princess hangs in the briar. She's holding up her dress so he can see her cat fur down there. Now she's under the house and she wants to marry him, but the house will fall down if she kisses her. He and Flora are children again in the witch's house. Flora lifts up her skirt and says, "See my pussy?" There's a cat down there, peering out at him, but it doesn't look like any cat he's ever seen. He says to Flora, "I have a pussy too," but his isn't the same. At last he knows what happened to the little starving naked thing in the forest where it went. It crawled into his catskin while he was asleep, and then it climbed right inside him, his small skin, and now it is huddled in his chest. Still cold and sad and hungry, it is eating him on the inside, and getting bigger, and one day there will be no small left at all, only that nameless hungry child wearing a small skin. Small moans in his sleep. There are ants in the witch's revenge skin, leaking out of her seams, and they march down into the cheeks and pinch at him, down under his arms and between his legs where his fur is growing in. And it hurts, it aches and aches. He dreams that the witch's revenge wakes now, and comes and licks him all over until the pain melts. The pane of glass melts. The ants march away again on their long greased thread. "What do you want?" said the witch's revenge. Small is no longer dreaming. He says, "I want my mother." Light from the moon comes down through the window of their bed, over their bed. Witch's revenge is very beautiful. She looks like a queen, like a knife, like a burning house, a cat. In moonlight, her fur shines. Her whiskers stand out like pulled stitches. Waxen thread. Witch revenge says, "Your mother's dead." "Take off your skin," Small says. He's crying, and the witch's revenge licks his tears away. Small skin pricks all over, and down under the house, something wails and wails. "Give me back my mother," he says. "Oh, my darling," says the mother, the witch revenge. "I can't do that. I'm full of ants. Take off my skin and all the ants will spill out, and there'll be nothing left of me." Small says, "Why do you left me all alone?" His mother, the witch, says, "I've never left you alone. Not even for a minute. I sewed up my death in the catskin so I could stay with you." "Take it off, let me see you," Small says. He pulls at the sheet on his bed, as if it were his mother's catskin. Witch Revenge shakes her head. She trembles and beats her tail back and forth. She says, "How can you ask me for such a thing?" "And how can I say no to you?" "Tomorrow night. Ask me again tomorrow night." And Small has to be satisfied with that. All night long, Small combs his mother's fur. His fingers are looking for the seams in her catskin. When the witch's revenge yawns, he peers out inside her mouth, hoping to catch a glimpse of his mother's face. He can feel himself becoming smaller and smaller. In the morning, he will be so small that he tries to put on his catskin on. He can barely do up the buttons. He'll be so small, so sharp, you might mistake him for an ant. And when the witch's revenge yawns, he'll creep inside her mouth. He'll go down into her belly. He'll go find his mother. If he can, he'll help his mother cut her catskin open so that she can get out again and come out and live in the world with him. And if she won't come out, then he won't either. He'll live there, the way that sailors learn to live inside the belly of the fish who had eaten them. And keeps house for his mother inside the house of her skin. This is the end of the story. The Princess Margaret grows up to kill witches and cats. If she doesn't, then someone else will have to do it. There is no such thing as witches, and there is no such thing as cats. Either. Only people dressed up in catskin suits. They have the reasons, and who is to say that they might not live that way happily ever after until the ants have carried away all the time that there is, to build something new and better out of it.